My name is Scott and this is Eclipsi.tv. Today I'm going to be teaching you how we can turn this shot into this in Adobe After Effects without any plugins. We're going to be using film grain, texture and border overlays to build this shot up layer by layer. I'll be running you through the process and showing you how to create an old school film flicker effect all inside of Adobe After Effects. I will be using some stock footage which is available down in the description below at our store Eclipsi.tv. There's a free sample pack available, so anyone can follow along with this tutorial, and if you like the assets you can check out the full pack, and if not, there are some free assets available for you to follow along with or use in your own projects. And we'd love to see what you use it with, so if you use anything or you follow along this tutorial and you're happy with the result, be sure to send it to us on Instagram, Facebook, Gmail. I'll have everything in the description below. I hope you enjoy. So we're in Adobe After Effects. I've made a new composition, I've brought in some footage to use, and I've also imported in our Super 8mm grains pack. I've separated this into 3 separate folders: grains, frames, and light leaks. We're going to start by adding some texture with a grain overlay. So if we come to our grains, we can go ahead and select one of these grains. I'm going to use 2-strip grain. We're going to drag this over the top of our footage, and what we're going to do is change our blending mode. We can do this by coming over here to where it says mode, and if you don't see this, you can either press toggle switches / modes down the bottom, or do the same thing by pressing F4 on your keyboard. You want to come over to where it says normal, hit this little arrow, and select screen blending mode to remove the black background from your grain file. And as you see now, that grain has been overlaid and we have all that texture added to our shot. There you go, before and after. Now if you wanted the highlights to pop a tiny bit more, you can go ahead and experiment with some different blending modes like linear dodge or add. You may also notice some of these files have the word hard light in and they have a grey background instead of a black background. These use hard light blending mode, which is just here, so I'm going to show you how we can do that. So if we take away this grain and we select warm hard light, for example, do the exact same thing, drag this over the top, come to our blending mode, but this time, you guessed it, we're going to select hard light. There we go. Now let's say you wanted to adjust the intensity of this grain. We can do this by just changing the opacity. If we come down to this drop down here, you'll see transform, click on that, and down the bottom we have opacity. Or if you want to save time, just press T on your keyboard and this will bring up our opacity option. And where it says 100%, we can change this number until we're happy with the result. So let's try around, I guess, 66%. I like how that looks. And now as you see, we have our grain added over the top. So the next step is to add a frame or a film border. So we can do this by coming to our frames. As you see, we have a nice selection here of pre-keyed frames. Now pre-keyed means all the work is done for you. All you have to do is select the frame you want and drag this over your footage, and as you see, automatically the transparency is applied and it's overlaid. Now you can just go through and select the frame you like. You'll notice there's one called overscan frame, and if I drag this over the top, you'll see that we have a bit at the top and a bit at the bottom. Now you could just leave this like this, and there's no problem with that. However, if you wanted to fill in these areas, I'm going to show you how we can do that. We just want to duplicate our source footage twice, so you can do this with Control or Command D. We'll do that twice, and we're going to call this one top, and this one bottom. So now we're going to select our top layer and press P on our keyboard to change the position. I'm just going to go ahead and change this number and drag it left, and if you want to hold shift on your keyboard, this will speed up how much you can move. And we're just going to align this with our frame on the top, just like so. Now we're going to do the exact same thing on the bottom. So we can either hit P, like I say, to get to our position, or we can get to it through our transform options down here. And we just want to do the same exact thing, but this time we're going to go right, and we're going to bring this in line with our bottom part of our frame. So there we go. What we've done is we've taken our source footage, we've duplicated it and added it to the bottom and to the top, and overlaid the frame so it all lines up. So here's how that looks. We now have our footage and we have our frame, and we also have our grain texture in there. I'm now going to add a film burn or a light leak over the top just to finish this off. So if we come to our light leaks, you see we have loads of different light leak files in here. I'm going to select light leak 2, which brings us to the end of our footage. Put this right on top, and we're just going to go to our mode again and change this to screen mode. Now if I press play, you'll see this is now overlaid just like it did with the grain, and now we have a finished final shot. So just before I go, I wanted to give you one last bonus tip, and that's how we can create a flickering film effect inside of After Effects using plugins. And what I mean by a flickering effect is basically, if you've ever looked at an old piece of film, you may notice you kind of have that like really fast flicker, which kind of gives it that old school classic look. And we can achieve that in After Effects using plugins. So to do this, we want to make an adjustment layer to start with. So if we come up to Layer, New, we just want to make a new adjustment layer. And I'm just going to call this Flicker, so I know what it does. And we want to add an effect on it called Exposure. So you can either search in your effects and presets, or we can come to Effect, and select our layer obviously, come up to Effect, come down to Color Correction, and we just want to find it down here. So here we go, Exposure. And Exposure, it just changes the exposure of our shot. And what we're going to do is automate this number here to automatically move up and down and create a flicker for us. So we can do this by holding Alt on our keyboard and selecting the little stopwatch here, and this will bring up our expressions. And what we want to do is type in here, just wiggle, and then open bracket, and now it's going to give us the option of typing in two numbers. And the first number will be how often we're changing the exposure, and the second number will be by how much. So a good starting is 15, and then you want to put a little comma, and then I'm going to do 0.3. And what this means is we're going to change it 15 times by 0.3. And so as you see, it's going to cycle around now, changing it by this amount, this often basically. And this has now created a nice flicker effect. Now to give you an extreme example, just to demonstrate how these numbers work, if we put 10 in here instead of 0.3, that would change the value by 10. So as you see, it's going to be really extreme. But I think for this shot, something like 0.3 looks really good. And of course, feel free to experiment with these two numbers. And now, what's so good about doing this on an adjustment layer is this flicker will only be applied to any layer underneath our adjustment layer. So let's say we didn't want the frame to have the flicker on. We just take our flicker and we drag it only above our grain. And now as you see, our frame stays the same, but the flicker is applied to everything else. So there we go. We've now added that flicker in After Effects.